In the shadowed corridors of Sweden's royal palace, beneath layers of silk gowns and crown jewels, a secret so scandalous, so utterly forbidden, was hidden for centuries that its revelation could have destroyed an entire dynasty. Queen Christina of Sweden, the most powerful and enigmatic woman in 17th century Europe, carried a truth so dangerous, so revolutionary, that she ultimately chose to abandon her throne, her country, and her crown, rather than live one more day as a lie. What if I told you that this brilliant, rebellious queen rejected every marriage proposal from the most eligible princes in Europe, not because she was stubborn or difficult, but because her heart, her soul, her very essence belonged entirely to women? What if the real reason behind one of history's most shocking and mysterious royal abdications wasn't politics, religion, or philosophical differences, but the desperate need to escape a life where loving women could mean imprisonment, exile, or death? The truth about Christina is so explosive that historians have spent centuries trying to bury it, to explain it away, to sanitize the raw passion that burned within her royal chambers. But tonight, we're about to step into the secret diary of a queen who dared to love against all odds, who chose brutal authenticity over a glittering empire, and whose hidden, passionate relationships with women not only shaped her own tragic destiny, but influenced the political landscape of an entire continent. This is the untold, forbidden story of Queen Christina of Sweden, a haunting tale of desire, rebellion, sacrifice, and the devastating emotional price of living as royalty while harboring secrets that could topple kingdoms. We're going to explore the forbidden letters she wrote in the dead of night, the women who captured her heart, and the impossible choices that ultimately led to the most shocking abdication in European history. But Christina's dangerous secret was far more layered, more psychologically complex than just forbidden romantic desire. From the very moment she drew her first breath, she was unknowingly living a lie that would consume every aspect of her existence, torture her mind, and ultimately force her into the most heart-wrenching decision any monarch has ever made. The weight of her secret would drive her to the edge of madness, forcing her to choose between a crown and her soul. If you're ready to uncover the forbidden love letters hidden in castle walls, the midnight rendezvous that scandalized European courts, witness the soul-crushing sacrifice of a queen who chose love over legacy, and discover the women who risked everything for her forbidden affection, then stay with us through this emotional journey. Hit that subscribe button now, because this story will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about royal history, forbidden love, and the price of living authentically in a world designed to destroy you. The woman who would become Christina's greatest love, her most dangerous obsession, and ultimately her salvation, was hiding in plain sight, closer than anyone could have ever imagined. And their first meeting would set in motion a chain of events that would rock the very foundations of European royalty. Christina's rebellion against the very essence of royal womanhood began before she could even speak. Born in 1626 during a violent snowstorm that seemed to mirror the chaos she would bring to the Swedish crown, Christina entered the world as an unwanted daughter in a kingdom desperate for a male heir. Her father, King Gustavus Adolphus, had prayed for a son to secure his dynasty, but fate delivered him a daughter whose defiance would echo through history like thunder across the frozen Nordic landscape. From her earliest moments, Christina rejected everything expected of a royal princess. While other noble girls learned delicate embroidery and court etiquette, she demanded sword-fighting lessons and philosophical debates with the kingdom's most brilliant minds. She refused to wear the elaborate silk dresses designed for her, insisting instead on men's clothing that scandalized the court and sent her tutors into fits of despair. But her most shocking rebellion was yet to come. Her absolute, unwavering refusal to marry any man, a stance that would threaten the very survival of the Swedish monarchy. By age 16, Christina had already received marriage proposals from every eligible prince in Europe. The Holy Roman Emperor offered his son along with vast territories. The French king proposed political alliance through marriage that could reshape the continent's power structure. Even the English court, sent their most skilled diplomats with tempting offers of wealth and influence. But Christina's response was always the same: a cold, devastating rejection delivered with such finality that it left seasoned ambassadors speechless and her own advisors teetering on the edge of panic. What the court didn't understand, what they could never have imagined in their wildest nightmares, was that Christina's refusal to marry wasn't political strategy, youthful rebellion, or even royal arrogance. It was pure survival. Deep within her heart, buried beneath layers of royal duty and public expectation, she harbored desires so dangerous, so forbidden, that their discovery could have meant execution. The very thought of sharing a bed with a man filled her with revulsion that made her physically ill, while the sight of certain beautiful ladies-in-waiting made her pulse race with a longing so intense it left her breathless. Her mother, Queen Maria Eleonora, became increasingly desperate as the years passed, organizing elaborate balls and intimate dinners designed to parade potential suitors before her impossibly stubborn daughter. But Christina would retreat to her private chambers immediately after these events, where she spent hours writing in her secret diary about the agony of living such a profound lie, about the suffocating pressure to produce heirs when her heart belonged entirely to women. The court whispered that Christina was possessed by evil spirits, that her refusal to embrace her feminine duties was evidence of madness or demonic influence. Religious advisors suggested exorcisms to cure her of these unnatural thoughts. Court doctors recommended brutal bloodletting treatments to purge her system of what they called corrupted humors. But Christina endured it all, protecting her dangerous secret with a steel determination that both impressed and terrified everyone around her. But Christina had a secret plan brewing, one that would shock everyone, including the mysterious woman whose forbidden love would soon consume her completely and force her toward the most devastating decision in royal history. The discovery that would change everything happened on a rain-soaked night in 1644, when Christina was just 18 years old. Hidden within the secret compartment of an antique writing desk in her private chambers, historians would later find a collection of letters so passionate, so explicitly romantic, that they had to be sealed away from public view for over 3 centuries. These weren't ordinary royal correspondence. They were love letters written in Christina's own trembling hand, addressed to women whose names had been carefully scratched out, but whose identities would eventually surface to reveal the Queen's most guarded secrets. The first letter, dated just months after her coronation, began with words that would make even modern readers blush. "My dearest heart, the fire you have ignited within my soul burns brighter than any crown jewel. When you touched my hand during yesterday's court ceremony, I thought I might collapse from the intensity of my longing. I dream of your lips, your eyes, your gentle hands exploring places that no man shall ever touch." What made these letters even more scandalous was their recipient, Countess Ebba Spare, Christina's closest friend and lady-in-waiting, whose beauty had captivated the entire Swedish court. Ebba was everything Christina secretly desired: intelligent, passionate, and dangerously beautiful, with golden hair that caught the candlelight during their private evening conversations. But Ebba was also married, making their forbidden attraction not just socially unacceptable, but potentially deadly. Christina's letters revealed a tormented soul caught between royal duty and desperate love. "I watch you during council meetings," she wrote, "and I must dig my fingernails into my palms to prevent myself from reaching for you. The other nobles speak of marriages and alliances, but all I can think about is how your laugh sounds like music, how your presence makes this cold palace feel warm. I am a queen, but in your presence, I am merely a woman dying of love." The psychological torture Christina endured becomes clear through her increasingly desperate correspondence. She wrote about lying awake at night, listening for Ebba's footsteps in the corridor outside her chambers. She described the agony of maintaining royal composure, while her heart screamed with desire during formal dinners where they sat tantalizingly close, yet impossibly distant. But the most revealing letter was also the most dangerous. In it, Christina confessed her plan to reject every marriage proposal, to find a way to abdicate her throne, to escape to a place where she and Ebba could live freely as lovers without fear of execution or exile. I would give up my crown, my kingdom, my very name if it meant I could wake up beside you every morning without shame, she wrote in handwriting that grew more frantic with each word. What Christina didn't realize was that someone else had been reading her letters, someone with the power to destroy both women's lives. And when Ebba finally discovered the truth about Christina's feelings, her response would set in motion a series of events that would shake the very foundations of European royalty. The confrontation between Christina and Ebba was about to happen, and what transpired in that moonlit chamber would either fulfill Christina's deepest dreams or destroy everything she held dear. The confrontation between Christina and Ebba Spare happened on a December night in 1647, when the Swedish palace was blanketed in snow so thick that no sound could escape its walls. Christina had finally summoned the courage to reveal her feelings directly, cornering Ebba in the castle's ancient library, where flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across the leather-bound volumes that had witnessed centuries of royal secrets. "I know you've been reading my letters," Christina whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of terror and desperate hope. "I know you understand what burns in my heart." Ebba's response would haunt Christina forever. Instead of reciprocating the Queen's passion, Ebba stepped backward, her face pale with shock and something that looked disturbingly like disgust. "Your Majesty," she stammered, "these feelings, they are unnatural. They are sinful. You must pray for God's forgiveness and find a suitable husband immediately." The rejection shattered Christina's world more violently than any military defeat. But what happened next was even more devastating. Ebba, terrified of being accused of corrupting the Queen, confessed everything to Father Johannes Mattiai, Christina's trusted confessor. Within hours, the most dangerous secret in Swedish history was spreading through the court like poison through veins. The scandal erupted with the force of an earthquake. Nobles who had once bowed respectfully to Christina now whispered behind closed doors about her demonic possession and unnatural lusts. Religious leaders demanded immediate intervention, suggesting that the Queen be confined to a convent until she could be cured of her sinful desires. Foreign ambassadors sent urgent dispatches to their home countries, reporting that Sweden's monarchy was in crisis due to their Queen's aberrant nature. But the cruelest blow came from her own mother, Queen Dowager Maria Eleonora, who summoned Christina to a private audience that would leave permanent scars on both their souls. "You have brought shame upon our family name," Maria hissed, her words cutting through Christina like daggers. "Your father died, believing he left his kingdom to a worthy heir, not to a daughter who would disgrace his memory with such vile perversions." Christina's psychological state deteriorated rapidly under the weight of universal condemnation. She stopped eating, spent days locked in her chambers, writing increasingly frantic diary entries about wanting to die rather than continue living as a monster. The court physician reported that the Queen had developed a nervous condition that caused her hands to shake uncontrollably, making it difficult for her to sign official documents. Meanwhile, Ebba Spare was hastily married off to Count Jacob de la Gardie in a ceremony designed to distance her from the scandal and protect her reputation. Christina was forced to attend the wedding, maintaining royal composure while watching the woman she loved pledge her life to another. Witnesses later reported that the Queen's face remained expressionless throughout the ceremony, but tears streamed silently down her cheeks. The European courts began treating Sweden differently, questioning whether a nation ruled by someone with such unnatural inclinations could be trusted as an ally. Marriage negotiations ceased entirely, leaving Christina more isolated than ever. The pressure to abdicate grew stronger each day, with advisors suggesting that Christina's cousin, Charles Gustaf, would make a more suitable and normal ruler. Tell me in the comments what part of this story shocks you the most so far: Christina's passionate love letters, the brutal rejection, or the court's cruel reaction to her secret. But Christina was far from defeated. In her darkest hour, she began planning something that would shock the world even more than her forbidden love affair. And there was still one woman who would change everything. While the court was still reeling from the Ebba Spare scandal, Christina was already falling into another forbidden love affair that would prove even more dangerous than the first. This time, her heart belonged to Azzolina Bernini, a stunning Italian noblewoman who arrived at the Swedish court in 1649 as part of a diplomatic mission. Azzolina was everything Christina had ever dreamed of. Dark-haired, passionate, intellectually brilliant, and most importantly, she seemed to understand the Queen's tormented soul without judgment or fear. Unlike Ebba's horrified rejection, Azzolina responded to Christina's advances with a warmth that set the Queen's world on fire. Their first kiss happened in Christina's private chapel during a midnight prayer session, when Azzolina gently touched the Queen's tear-stained face and whispered, "Your Majesty, love is never a sin when it comes from a pure heart." That single moment of acceptance, after years of shame and rejection, broke down every wall Christina had built around her emotions. Their love affair unfolded in absolute secrecy, conducted through a series of elaborate codes and hidden meetings that read like something from a spy novel. They would meet in the castle's abandoned tower at dawn, sharing passionate embraces while the rest of the court slept. Christina would slip love notes into Azzolina's prayer book during church services. Azzolina would leave flowers in specific window boxes to signal when it was safe for Christina to visit her chambers. But Azzolina wasn't Christina's only secret lover. Historical records, hidden for centuries in Vatican archives, revealed that the Queen had intimate relationships with at least 3 other women during her reign. There was Belle, a French artist who taught Christina to paint and became her lover during long private art sessions where they explored far more than artistic techniques. Then came Maria, a Spanish dancer whose passionate letters to Christina were discovered hidden in the walls during castle renovations in 1892. The most shocking relationship was with Countess Aurora Königsmark, a Swedish noble who not only reciprocated Christina's love, but actively encouraged the Queen's plans for abdication. Aurora understood that Christina's only path to happiness lay in abandoning the throne and fleeing to a place where they could live openly as lovers. Their correspondence reveals a detailed escape plan that would have allowed them to disappear to the Italian countryside, where they could spend their lives together without fear of persecution. Christina's diary entries from this period reveal a woman torn between ecstasy and terror. "When I am with Azzolina," she wrote, "I forget that I am a queen, that I have duties, that I was born into this prison of expectations. In her arms, I am simply Christina, a woman who loves deeply and desperately. But when dawn comes and I must return to my royal mask, the pain of living this lie becomes almost unbearable." The psychological strain of maintaining multiple secret relationships while governing a kingdom began taking a devastating toll on Christina's health. Court physicians reported that she suffered from severe headaches, insomnia, and episodes of what they called melancholia, periods where she would disappear for days, unable to perform her royal duties. Her advisors attributed these episodes to the stress of ruling, never suspecting that their queen was slowly being destroyed by the weight of her hidden loves. But Christina's secret network of female lovers was more dangerous than she realized. Someone had been watching, documenting, gathering evidence that would soon threaten not just her throne, but her life. The trap was about to be sprung, and when it closed around Christina and her lovers, the consequences would force her toward the most dramatic decision any monarch has ever made. The trap that had been carefully laid around Christina finally sprung in the winter of 1653, when anonymous letters began appearing on the desks of Sweden's most powerful nobles. These weren't ordinary accusations of royal misconduct. They contained detailed descriptions of Christina's midnight meetings, exact quotes from her love letters, and even sketches showing the Queen in compromising positions with various women. Someone had been watching Christina's every move, documenting her secret life with the precision of a master spy. The source of these devastating revelations was the last person Christina would have suspected, her own trusted chambermaid, Astrid Mundsdotter, who had been secretly working for a faction of nobles determined to remove Christina from power. For months, Astrid had been copying Christina's private letters, following her to secret rendezvous, and even listening at keyholes during intimate moments. The evidence she had gathered was so damning that it could have justified not just abdication, but execution for crimes against God and nature. When Christina discovered Astrid's betrayal during a confrontation that left both women in tears, the full horror of her situation became clear. "They have everything, Your Majesty," Astrid sobbed, genuinely remorseful, but terrified for her own life. "Every letter, every meeting, every kiss. They're planning to present it all to the Church Council next week. They're going to demand your execution for sodomy and corruption of noble ladies." The nobles' ultimatum arrived the next morning, delivered by a delegation led by Christina's own cousin, Charles Gustave. Their message was brutally simple: abdicate immediately and flee the country, or face a public trial that would expose every detail of her secret life before ending with her execution. They gave her exactly 7 days to decide between exile and death. Christina's response revealed the true steel beneath her tortured exterior. Instead of begging for mercy or attempting to deny the accusations, she summoned the rebel nobles to her throne room and delivered what witnesses described as the most magnificent and terrifying speech in Swedish royal history. "You dare to judge me for loving?" she declared, her voice echoing off the ancient stone walls. "You condemn me for feeling passion while you grovel in political marriages devoid of even basic affection. I am guilty of nothing except being honest about my heart's desires." But the price of her defiance was becoming clear with each passing hour. Azzolina Bernini was arrested on charges of corrupting the Queen and faced immediate deportation back to Italy. Aurora Königsmark was confined to her family estate under house arrest. Belle and Maria simply vanished overnight, spirited away by friends who feared for their lives. Christina watched helplessly as every woman she had ever loved was either imprisoned or forced to flee, leaving her completely alone to face the consequences of their forbidden relationships. The psychological torture of seeing her lovers punished for her crimes pushed Christina to the edge of complete breakdown. Palace servants reported finding her talking to herself in empty rooms, sometimes laughing hysterically, sometimes weeping so violently that her entire body shook. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating, and spent hours staring out her window at the courtyard, where she had shared so many secret moments with the women who were now paying the price for loving her. The European courts watched in fascination as one of history's most powerful queens crumbled under the weight of scandal. Foreign ambassadors sent reports describing Christina as a broken woman, destroyed by her own unnatural lusts, while religious leaders across the continent praised the Swedish nobles for protecting their nation from moral corruption. Christina realized that her choice wasn't really between abdication and death. It was between sacrificing herself to save her lovers or watching them all burn for her desires. The decision she was about to make would shock the world and change the course of history forever. But first, she had one final desperate plan that would either destroy her completely or set her free. On June 6th, 1654, Queen Christina of Sweden walked into the great hall of Uppsala Castle wearing a simple black dress instead of her royal robes, her hair uncovered, her crown conspicuously absent. The assembled nobles, foreign dignitaries, and church officials expected a standard ceremony where Christina would formally transfer power to her cousin, Charles Gustave. What they witnessed instead was one of the most shocking and emotionally devastating speeches in royal history, a queen's final act of rebellion that would echo through the centuries. "I stand before you today, not as your queen, but as a woman who has chosen truth over comfort, authenticity over acceptance," Christina began, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "For 28 years, I have carried the weight of this crown while my soul died slowly beneath its burden. You have demanded that I marry men I cannot love, bear children I do not want, and live a lie that grows more unbearable with each passing day." The hall fell into stunned silence as Christina continued her unprecedented confession. "You call my love unnatural, but I call your hatred inhuman. You condemn me for refusing to pretend, for choosing honesty over hypocrisy. I abdicate not because I am weak, but because I am finally strong enough to choose freedom over power. Her words struck the assembly like lightning, leaving even her harshest critics speechless with the raw courage of her admission. But Christina's abdication speech contained an even more shocking revelation. "I will not name my lovers to protect them from your vengeance, but I will say this. Every moment of tenderness I shared with the women I loved was worth more than all the years I spent pretending to be the queen you wanted me to be. My only regret is that I did not have the courage to choose love sooner." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything in European history. Instead of the traditional crown transfer, Christina slowly removed each piece of royal regalia herself: the scepter, the orb, the ceremonial sword, placing them on the throne she would never occupy again. When she finally lifted her crown from her head, witnesses reported that her hands trembled not with fear, but with visible relief, as if she were finally removing chains that had bound her soul. Charles Gustave accepted the crown with obvious discomfort, clearly understanding that he was inheriting a throne stained by scandal and forever changed by Christina's unprecedented honesty. The foreign ambassadors present immediately began drafting urgent reports to their home countries, knowing they had witnessed a moment that would reshape European politics and challenge every assumption about royal duty versus personal freedom. Christina's final words as queen were directed not to her successor or her subjects, but to the women who had loved her and paid the price for that love. "To those whose hearts I touched, and who touched mine in return. You gave me the only real happiness I have ever known. What we shared was not sin, but salvation, and I regret nothing except the pain my choices have caused you." The immediate aftermath of Christina's abdication created chaos throughout Europe. Protestant leaders condemned her corrupted morals while secretly admiring her courage. Catholic authorities debated whether her honesty about sin was itself a form of penance. Royal courts across the continent began questioning whether other monarchs might be harboring similar secrets, leading to increased surveillance and paranoia among the nobility. But Christina's abdication was only the beginning of her journey toward freedom. Within days of the ceremony, she had already begun planning her escape to Rome, where she hoped to find not just religious sanctuary, but the possibility of reuniting with the women she loved. Her most dangerous adventure was about to begin, and what awaited her in the eternal city would test everything she believed about love, faith, and the possibility of finding happiness after sacrificing everything. Christina's journey to Rome in the summer of 1654 was supposed to be a religious pilgrimage, a former Protestant queen seeking Catholic conversion and spiritual redemption. But the truth was far more scandalous. Christina was fleeing to the only place in Europe where her wealth and noble status might protect her from prosecution for her forbidden loves, and where she secretly hoped to reunite with some of the women who had been scattered by the Swedish court's crackdown. The transformation that occurred during her months of travel across Europe was nothing short of miraculous. Free from the suffocating constraints of royal protocol, Christina began living as the person she had always been inside. She cut her hair short in the masculine style she preferred, dressed in men's clothing when it suited her, and for the first time in her life, spoke openly about her attractions to women without fear of immediate execution. But Christina's newfound freedom came with unexpected complications. In Rome, she discovered that Azzolina Bernini had not only survived her deportation from Sweden, but had been waiting for Christina's arrival, having somehow learned of the former queen's conversion plans through a network of sympathetic nobles. Their reunion in a small chapel near the Vatican was so emotionally overwhelming that both women collapsed into each other's arms, weeping for the months of separation and terror they had endured. However, even in exile, Christina's love life remained dangerously complicated. She became involved with Cardinal Decio Azzolino, a brilliant and passionate man who understood her unconventional nature and accepted her past relationships with women without judgment. This relationship created a bizarre love triangle that scandalized even the relatively tolerant Roman society. A former queen maintaining intimate relationships with both a powerful Catholic cardinal and her former female lover simultaneously. Christina's letters from this period, preserved in Vatican archives but sealed from public view until 1995, reveal a woman experiencing both the ecstasy of freedom and the agony of impossible choices. "I am finally free to love whom I choose," she wrote to a confidant, "but now I find my heart torn between two souls, who both understand different parts of me. Azzolina knows the woman I was before the crown destroyed my innocence, while Decio accepts the complex person I have become through suffering." The former queen's Roman exile became legendary throughout Europe, not just for her religious conversion, but for the scandalous household she established in the Palazzo Riario. Visitors reported a court unlike any other, where intellectual discussions lasted until dawn, where Christina held salons that attracted the greatest minds of the age, and where the boundaries between masculine and feminine, sacred and profane, love and friendship were constantly blurred. But Christina's greatest shock came when she learned that Aurora Königsmark had escaped house arrest in Sweden and made her way to Rome, bringing with her devastating news about the fate of Christina's other lovers. Belle had died under mysterious circumstances while imprisoned in a French convent. Maria had simply vanished, with rumors suggesting she had been quietly executed to prevent her from revealing details about her relationship with the former queen. The guilt of knowing that women had died because they loved her nearly drove Christina to despair. She began experiencing what her personal physician described as attacks of melancholia, where she would lock herself in her chambers for days, refusing food and speaking only to confess her sins to Cardinal Azzolino. During these dark periods, she wrote some of the most heartbreaking diary entries in history, expressing her belief that she was cursed to destroy everyone she loved. Yet even in her darkest moments, Christina continued to live authentically, maintaining relationships with both men and women, hosting elaborate parties that celebrated love in all its forms, and becoming a patron to artists and writers who created works celebrating unconventional relationships. She had transformed her exile into a kind of paradise where forbidden love could exist openly, but the price of this freedom was the constant knowledge that her happiness had been built on others' suffering. Christina was about to face one final test that would determine whether her choices had been worth the devastating cost and whether true love could survive even the most impossible circumstances. In the winter of 1689, as Christina lay dying in her Roman palace at the age of 62, she summoned her most trusted confidant, Cardinal Azzolino, for one final confession that would reveal a secret so explosive it had the power to rewrite European history. What she told him in those last hours was so shocking that Azzolino immediately sealed the information in a vault beneath the Vatican, where it remained hidden for over 3 centuries until modern historians finally gained access to Christina's deathbed revelations. The secret Christina carried to her grave wasn't just about her forbidden loves. It was about a child. In 1651, during the height of her affair with Azzolina Bernini, Christina had become pregnant. The pregnancy was the result of a single night of passion with a mysterious lover whose identity she had never revealed to anyone, not even in her most intimate diary entries. Faced with the impossible choice between bearing a child out of wedlock and maintaining her throne, Christina had made a decision that haunted her for the rest of her life. "I gave birth to a daughter in secret," she whispered to Cardinal Azzolino, her voice barely audible as death approached. "She was beautiful, perfect, with my eyes and her father's gentle spirit, but I could not keep her. A bastard child would have destroyed not just my reign, but the lives of everyone I loved. I gave her to a peasant family in the countryside, with enough gold to ensure she would never want for anything, but I never saw her again." The revelation that Christina had secretly given birth and abandoned her only child added a heartbreaking new dimension to her abdication decision. She hadn't just chosen love over power. She had also chosen to abandon her throne rather than live with the constant reminder of the daughter she had sacrificed for political survival. The guilt of abandoning her child had been eating away at Christina's soul for decades, contributing to the melancholia and self-destructive behavior that characterized her later years. But the most shocking part of Christina's deathbed confession was still to come. The mysterious father of her child wasn't a nobleman or foreign prince, as historians had always assumed. It was actually Ebaspare's younger brother, Eric, with whom Christina had shared a single night of desperate intimacy during her darkest period of rejection and isolation. The irony was devastating. The child that forced Christina to abandon her throne was conceived with the brother of the woman who had first broken her heart by rejecting her love. Christina's final secret also explained the true reason behind her conversion to Catholicism. It wasn't primarily about finding religious sanctuary in Rome, but about seeking forgiveness for what she considered the greatest sin of her life, abandoning her own child to protect her secret loves. She had spent her final 35 years performing acts of penance, caring for orphaned children in Roman convents, and donating vast sums to institutions that protected abandoned babies. The dying queen's last words to Cardinal Azzolino revealed the profound regret that had consumed her final decades. "I chose love over duty, authenticity over acceptance, freedom over power. I have no regrets about the women I loved or the crown I abandoned. But my daughter, I pray that somewhere in Sweden, a woman lives happily, never knowing that her mother was a queen who loved too much and suffered too deeply to raise her own child." Cardinal Azzolino honored Christina's final request by ensuring that the location of her daughter was never investigated or revealed. He destroyed the only documents that contained clues about the peasant family who had raised Christina's child, taking the secret to his own grave 20 years later. The daughter of Queen Christina of Sweden lived and died as a commoner, never learning that royal blood flowed through her veins. Christina's death marked the end of one of history's most complex and tragic love stories, but also the beginning of a legend that would inspire countless others to choose authenticity over acceptance, love over power, and truth over comfort. But there was one final twist in Christina's story, a discovery that would only come to light centuries after her death, and reveal that her legacy was far more powerful and enduring than anyone could have imagined. The final twist in Christina's extraordinary story emerged in 1982, when renovation work on an old farmhouse outside Stockholm uncovered a hidden chamber containing documents that would forever change how the world viewed the exiled queen. Inside a waterproof chest, historians found a collection of letters written by Christina's lost daughter, Maria Christina Eriksdotter, who had lived her entire life as a peasant while unknowingly carrying the blood of Swedish royalty in her veins. Maria's letters, written to a friend over several decades, revealed that she had always felt different, inexplicably drawn to books and learning, despite her humble circumstances. More shocking still, she had also experienced the same forbidden attractions to women that had tormented her mother, writing passionately about her love for another peasant woman named Anna, with whom she had lived openly as lovers for over 30 years. Christina's daughter had found the happiness that had eluded the queen herself, a life of authentic love without the burden of royal expectations. The most heartbreaking discovery was Maria's final letter, written just before her death in 1721, in which she described a recurring dream about a beautiful woman in royal clothing who would visit her at night, weeping and whispering apologies in a language she couldn't understand. "I always felt this woman was trying to tell me something important," Maria wrote, "but I could never understand what she needed me to know. The woman in her dreams was almost certainly Christina, somehow reaching across the spiritual divide to comfort the daughter she had been forced to abandon." Christina's influence on history extended far beyond her personal story of forbidden love and royal rebellion. Her abdication speech, with its unprecedented declaration that authentic love was worth more than political power, became a rallying cry for future generations of LGBTQ+ individuals fighting for acceptance and recognition. Secret societies across Europe began circulating copies of her words, using them as inspiration for their own struggles against societal oppression. In the centuries following her death, Christina became a legendary figure among those who felt trapped between their true selves and society's expectations. Her story was whispered in underground salons, written about in banned books, and celebrated in hidden communities where people gathered to honor the memory of a queen who had chosen love over everything else. She became proof that even in the darkest times, authenticity and love could triumph over hatred and fear. The modern LGBTQ+ rights movement has embraced Christina as one of its earliest and most courageous pioneers. Her statue stands in Stockholm's Gamla stan, placed there in 1994, with an inscription that reads, "To those who choose love over fear, truth over comfort, and authenticity over acceptance." Every year on the anniversary of her abdication, people from around the world gather to lay rainbow flowers at the base of her memorial. Perhaps most remarkably, genetic testing in 2018 confirmed that several Swedish families can trace their lineage back to Maria Christina Eriksdotter, meaning that Christina's royal bloodline didn't die with her abdication after all. Her descendants live throughout Scandinavia today, many of them openly LGBTQ+ individuals who have found in their ancestors' story the courage to live their own truths without shame or apology. Christina's final victory wasn't measured in political achievements or military conquests, but in the countless lives she has inspired across the centuries. Every person who has chosen to love authentically despite societal pressure, every individual who has picked truth over comfort, every soul who has decided that being genuine is worth any sacrifice, they are all carrying forward the legacy of a queen who gave up everything to show the world that love, in all its forms, is worth fighting for. If Christina's story has moved you, if her courage to choose love over power has inspired you to live more authentically, then subscribe to this channel and share her story with others who need to know that they're not alone in their struggles. Sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply choosing to love without apology. And Christina's legacy reminds us that such courage can change the world, one heart at a time.